Hello, welcome. My name is Martin Daws, Bard of Bethesda, poet from Bethesda. And today I'm going to take a poetry walk from here, by the Penrhyn Quarry, to there, Bethesda. This is where I live. Today we're going to speak about the history of the Penrhyn Quarry, about my relationship with where I live. I'm going to speak about identity and about location. So what you can see here are the slate tips. Tips of Spuriel, Ochwaral Penrhyn, the rubbish tips of the Penrhyn Quarry. And this is slate that can't be split into flat roof tiles. Slate is a rock that's laid in layers of sediment that's compressed by time into stone. And back in the day, when they blew out the slate that couldn't be split in flat layers because it wobbled, they'd dump it here. So we've got this tremendous stone landscape around us, discarded slate. The reason I wanted to speak about this is that this is the great symbolism that I experienced living here. And I'm from England originally, but I've lived here for 19 years. And the symbolism is this. These are pyramids to the destructive nature of humankind. Exploitation of nature. Natural resource seen as an opportunity to be taken, to be owned, to be capitalised. But what we see here is the natural process of nature reclaiming. This is a particularly important space for me because underneath this slate tip, right now, we're walking past, is a buried village by the name of Bryn Llys. Now, Bryn Llys was buried in a planned burial. It wasn't that the slate tip slid onto it. It was planned approximately 130 years ago. And the reason that happened was the owners of the quarry, the Penrhyn estate, led by the eponymous Lord Penrhyn. We'll talk a little bit more about the Penrhyn estate later. The Penrhyn estate ran out of space for dumping their slate, so as the essentially feudal landlord of the place, the industrial captains, they moved the people from the village of Bryn Llys, which is adjacent to the quarry. The actual quarry workings are just behind there. They moved them out, began dumping the slate on top of it. So under here there's a lake that was filled in, a collection of houses, a church, a whole community buried under the slates. So the first poem I'd like to share with you is called Under the Slates. It commemorates Bryn Llys, the people of that village, and speaks to those of us who live here now. We are earth people. Long have we hidden in the rock-heavy heart and harboured our strengths among the agonies of stone. Ours is the granite, wind-withered to pinnacles, and the whispered secret passed behind its scream. And the dark slate, blasted into fragments of its nature, shattered forgotten bodies, patterned random, heaped on houses, dropped on churches, silenced hymns, from buried villages lost to light. We mourn our eagles, count our sheep, lay our seed on crusted bed springs, spine shrunk with the gravity, dreams pulled out of starflight, driven back to bone, to earth, to wakeful vision, roar with piling rock against the sun. We are the subjects of a skyline, held in its hard embrace, its dark love, a sanctuary for our healing. Under the slates. I love seeing the way that nature's reclaiming this bare, blasted slate. When I first moved here 19 years ago, there was barely any green on here at all. A lot of these trees were, if they were here, they were very small. And the process develops, it's just natural, it snowballs. So the first thing I began observing is lichen latches onto the slate, and then moss grows on it. And if we look here, let's see what we can see. You can see the moss developing on this slate here. There's some areas of lichen growing on it in these parts here. From the slate you get ferns growing into it. It starts developing up. There's some bits of grass here. And of course, now that the trees have got in, we see all these leaves. The first trees that get in, particularly the birches, these silver birch that you see here, pioneer trees that take over the barren land and begin bringing back the trees to it. And of course the roots go down into the slate, help generate the earth themselves. The majority of the leaves that you see on the floor now are oak trees, from oak leaves from oak trees. And we're going to walk through a small oak woodland now. So the Penrhyn Quarry has been active since the late 16th century. For the first 100 years or so, it was mainly a local slate quarry, using slates, roof tiles for the local area. And then the first Lord Penrhyn took over, an industrialist of the 18th century, global coloniser, captain of industry, and began developing this quarry into a global enterprise until by the mid to late 19th century it was the largest quarry in the world, largest slate quarry in the world. Still working 24 hours a day. I've been told there's only one day that it closes, Christmas Day. At its height it employed approximately 3,000 quarrymen. Now it employs about 200. It's been mechanised. So when you see the village of Bethesda, which is where we're walking to now, this was a village built to house 3,000 quarrymen, plus the attendant services. Now there's about 200, and they're not all from Bethesda. So as we walk into the village now, we're walking in the footsteps of those quarry workers. This is the way they would have walked, going into the quarry for work, and back home afterwards. Back home to their community, back home to their families that they were supporting through this hard manual labour, hard and dangerous. So the mechanisation of the quarry means it employs a lot less people, but of course it's a lot safer now as well. I want to show you this. See these houses? This is a terrace called Grisha Cochion. This is a particular type of North Walian architecture. They're called quarrymen's houses. And Grisha Cochion in English means the red steps. Just round the corner up here, there's one of the entrances where the quarryman would have walked in to get into the quarry. So the dangers that came with the quarry life were partly from the movement of large blocks of stone, partly from putting dynamite into a mountain and blowing it up, and partly through the dust that was created as you split slates. It creates dust, and that dust goes into the lungs of the workers. It creates a disease called silicosis, fatal disease. There was an infamous report where the Penrhyn Quarry brought down some doctors who wrote a report saying it was a healthy lifestyle being a quarry person. There's no sign of it being injurious to the health of the workers at all. That was a lie. If you look behind me there, up on the top of the slate tips, you can see the end of the zip wire. You might have heard of it. It's the second longest zip wire in the world. It's representative of the current industry. That quarry only employs 200 people, like I say. How many does the zip wire employ? Probably not even 200. Most of the ones I know who work there are on 0-hour contracts anyway. Plus ça change, as they say. So now we have leisure and tourism as our primary industry in this area. around these beautiful mountains where nature is so strong. Walking in the footsteps of the quarrymen. So Bethesda is famous for a number of reasons. Virtually all of them related to the quarry. Something that people here can take pride in, and I'm certainly moved by, is the history of unionisation here. Bethesda was one of the sites of early industrial action. There were strikes in the late 19th century. There's one for 11 months in 1896. And the hard working conditions, the very poor treatment of the workers, the rank exploitation by the Penryn estate of their workforce, who they sought to control, to coerce into giving them political support. They underpaid them, meant that the process, the consciousness of unionisation, the consciousness of the working people's rights was strong here. Until in 1900, the workmen coordinated themselves and went on strike. It's just a car coming past, hang on. Yeah, it's still a country place where people are polite to each other, you know, you wave to people if they get out of your way and thank them and stuff. Yeah, so the big strike, the great strike of Penryn, 1900 to 1903, a 3-year strike. This is before the welfare state, before the Labour government of the mid-20th century put in place so many of the protections for workers' rights. It was a long and hard conflict that divided this community as well. After maybe 10 to 12 months, things had got desperate in the village for the strikers. Lord Penryn began enticing some workers back. If you went back to work, you got a golden sovereign. At one point, there was approximately 2,200 workers on strike. 700 had gone back. The 700 were vilified. I'm not here to judge them. I can't imagine what that would be like. There's stories of children starving in the village here. Men who've got their families dependent on them from work. The pressure they were under to go back, torn between the need of their family and the needs they have to supply, to provide for them, and the unionisation, the community and the strength of what they were fighting for in terms of improving their lot. So the quarry reopened approximately 6 months after the beginning of the strike, and it carried on producing slate to a combination of the bradul, as they were called, the traitors who went back to work, and scab labourers they called it, who they brought in. So there was an exodus from the village of people. People went down to South Wales. There was a North Walian diaspora that opened up in Pennsylvania, where there's slate quarrying out there in the USA. And eventually an agreement was drawn. 3 years after the strike, production resumed. But those rifts still exist here. Some housing that was built for the workers who came in and went to work, still known as Traitors' Row. Penryn Castle, that's the country home of the Penryn Lords from that period, owned by the National Trust now. There's still lots of people who won't go there, as a point of principle. Hey. So as we walk into Bethesda, I want to give you all this background and history as context for a poem of mine. It's called Love Letter to Bethesda. Adre newydd fi. That means my new home in Welsh. So you can have an appreciation of the references to this poem. The way I wrote it was as a commission for a band from Bethesda called Nine Bach, who are local heroes for us. They're a worldwide renowned prize-winning group from Bethesda. and we had a big new art centre opening up in Bangor 4 years ago, and that art centre had a launch event that they commissioned, and it was for Nine Bach to produce a show they wrote called Llechi. It's a Welsh language show, music, dance and performance, and I was very fortunate. They asked me to write a poem to go in the show, and I wrote a love letter to Bethesda. The way it came about was the week previous to that, in that art centre, I'd done a residency for National Theatre Wales. It's called Made in Bangor, which is the town at the bottom of the valley there. And the director of that show had given me a writing exercise as part of it. She said, write a love letter to Bangor. So I wrote a love letter to Bangor. Then the week after, I had to deliver my poem for Llechi. Now, to be honest with you, I was very busy at the time. I was involved in some schools projects. I'd been doing this residency for National Theatre Wales, and I was really struggling to write the poem for Llechi, until it got to the point where I had to sit down and deliver while they were rehearsing the music to the show. And in desperation, I decided I'd have to just take the Bangor poem and rewrite it for Bethesda. So I took the hook from the Bangor poem, which is I Love You Be, and began rewriting it from the perspective of Bethesda, taking out the elements I spoke of about Bangor, the places and the people, and the culture, and replacing it with things I knew about for Bethesda. The local choir, who their history is in the quarry, Cor Penrhyn. And back in during the strike, Cor Penrhyn toured the USA for a number of years, raising money to send back home to support the families of the strikers. Cor Penrhyn were rehearsing with Nine Bach, and the music got inside me. I felt it in my solar plexus, and I began writing my love letter to Bethesda. I just spoke about what I know, what I see, what I feel. I began identifying it, and I want to share it with you. People here love it. I have to say, it was a success for me. We're just about to walk over Afon Ogwen. Afon is the Welsh word for river. So this is the river that runs through it all. Here we are. This is Afon Ogwen. And this is Bethesda. So I'm going to take you to the place where the poem begins. The first line is standing at the top stop. So as I wrote that, I was thinking of this bus stop on the top here. And we're going to go there, we're going to say the poem. I'm going to take you on a little tour. There's a line in it as well where it talks about quarrymen's names scraped on slate. There was a tradition of carving your name into slate. So the quarrymen, on their way to work, on their way back, would maybe do a little bit on a letter each day. I mentioned that. There's some place names in it, Gairlan, Ton of Oil. Mentions the charity shop, Annie Ogwen. Speaks of this place that I call home. Here we are. So when I first moved here, this shop here, the closed down shop there, that was the Spa shop. I was 24 hours when I got here. There was a little night kiosk that would open up and people would give you stuff in there. There was a baker's, there was a butcher's, there's all kinds of things. Then they opened another grocer's down the bottom called Londis, and they opened the Tesco's up there. That's finally closed now. We'll see what happens there. This is Capel Jerusalem, big Methodist chapel. Our cenotaph. There's a small memorial just up the way to the centenary of the strike as well. And here we are, top stop. Love letter to Bethesda. Adrenewydd V. Standing at the top stop, 67 late again, waiting for the high street to wake up. Slate created grizzle grey, drizzle day skyline, eyeliner mist slipped, mountain made misfit, left to sever, living from shattered and battered fragments of your whole. I love you, B. She's slidden down Gareland, gristle chin man love, unugly grumpily, too beautiful for pretty. Spa town memories of last night's pub crawl scrawled across her hard-faced, rough grey sleep-stiff fingers rolling a cig. Pesta heather, queasy dishevelled Bethesda morning, I love you, B. Tan of oil, Wonderwall, first taste and wasted. 90 Bach's chapel clothes dressed best in Annie's old underrock blasted. Aftershock shadow cast, Abacasek slapped cheek, rain-faced, you live it. Strong-hearted, straight talking, hard loving with it, I love you, B. Weekend she-warrior, guttered stiletto tottering, wandering, squabbling from a Brenninia Vic. Empty-eyed mini-dress vodka shot assassins, pint glass Tarzans, paid packet thrashing, and everybody knows everybody else is Hannes. It's what makes you so resilient. Your roots cling to each other, indifferent to the day. My be you a henno, why worry about tomorrow? I love you, B. Stone brushed, the morning drips hush on Coed Bryn Meirig memories. Reminds us of the reasons we were here. Copper-plated quarrymen's names scraped on slate weight patience, fixing stitched together Joneses, Williamses, Hugheses, Owenses, Robertses, Evanses, Ellises, Pritchards, blistered fingers whisper how they work to dig a way for their children out of the galleries. Time and place and name enshrined in slate made sacred here. Hate made naked here, revealed lest we forget. Call the lords to leave, we grieve them still. Quarry smacked and slate jacked with all the pain they brought you, all the hurt they taught you to reject. There's a self-respect in you, no quarry blast or open cast mind theft can take, a spirit no one can break. I love you, B. Call me to your riverside. Watch me tiptoe to the dawn before you. Pity the city in me, B. I wonder if one day your stone will hold my story too. Call me Daws. Daws. Daws, Batho Bethesda. Daws, a bastard Sison, writes on slate waste and loves you, lives under and above you, shouts your name across the planet, your granite's in me now. Dwindbiu Bethesda. Intimate or tips or spurial, I know their secrets. Bryn Llys, eulogy and slate grit, poetry, dwin grandor is zipwire whistling, listening to the rock split echoes. Feels like we never heard you sing a happy song. I love you, B. Scratched out in minor melody. Raw-skied rebel town, shout the devil down. Found an older tongue in me. Time steeped and root deep. I love you, B.